When I woke up Monday morning of this week, the sun was shining, the birds were chirping. It was a glorious, glorious day. Then, over the course of one tumultuous and ridiculous news day, multiple code of conduct related news items began to hit. At first, I ignored them, because every time I utter the word code of conduct, someone in the world gets very, very angry at me, even though my opinions about code of conduct and code of conduct related topics are not really all that intense. I don't have really strong opinions. I'm on record as liking virtual hugs, but that's about as extreme as my code of conduct feelings get, truth be told. Perhaps that makes me a good person, perhaps that makes me a bad person. I really don't know, but I just don't feel strong about it in most cases. So, over the last few weeks, I've avoided talking about it, because every time I do, there's a very, very small contingency of individuals, and we're talking like half a dozen, that get really, really angry and begin calling people and threatening people for just simply having anything to do with me. It gets a little ridiculous. So I've avoided the topic, right? But then the news kept hitting and people kept reacting to this news. And the news was that Richard Stallman and the Free Software Foundations have their version of a sort of a code of conduct that they call the Kind Communication Guidelines, which actually was kind of interesting. And it came out that the SQLite project had a code of conduct, or rather sort of a code of ethics, that they had in place for, I believe, about half a year now, but just became a big thing. And it was based on the code of ethics for monks, I believe. I want to say around the 14th century, something like that. And people got very mad at the SQLite project for that, forcing the SQLite project to change. And after reading through all of the documents, after reading through all of the responses, I thought, I do have to talk about this. I simply must. So I am, but I'm going to do so in as neutral of a way as I can, because the reality is I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. I don't want to make anyone feel pushed out of this or any other community, and I don't want to belittle the work of other people either. I just simply want to talk about what's happening, because some of it is really interesting for our broader open source and free software community, and some of it is amusing. And my apologies to those of you who don't find some of this amusing. I really do. So we're going to talk about it. What you see on the right side, left side, whatever side that is, of the screen right now is my code of conduct. I posted this on my website some time back because I needed a code of conduct. Everyone else has a code of conduct. Why can't Lunduk have a code of conduct? So Lunduk made a code of conduct that literally just is be excellent to each other. And that's it. And that's all. And I hold that. And when I say each other, that includes everyone. So as we go through the day to day talking about these topics, bear in mind that every individual we're talking about is a human being with feelings, with family and friends, and deserves to be treated with awesomeness and excellence. And every single one, even the ones that you, me, or anyone else disagree with incredibly strongly, still people. Still probably pretty cool people that care passionately about what they're doing. It doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of a laugh as we go along here. So let's start with Richard Stallman's announcement. I'm pulling this text from lwn.net, which is fantastic. And this is the announcement that Richard Stallman made of the Kind Communication Guidelines for the GNU project. And I'm going to read part of it to you because it's better if it comes straight from Stallman's mouth than if I'm just paraphrasing. Announcing the GNU Kind Communication Guidelines. The initial version have been published over here, and I'll read some of that to you in a moment. On behalf of the GNU project, I ask all GNU contributors to make their best efforts to follow these guidelines in GNU project discussions. In August, a discussion started among hey, come on back there. There we go. In August, a discussion started among GNU package maintainers about the problem that GNU development often pushes women away. Clearly, this is not a good thing. That should make at least some people very, very happy that Richard Stallman's taking issues of people feeling alienated from projects very seriously. I like that. Some maintainers advocated adopting a code of conduct with strict rules. Some other free software projects have done this, generating some resistance. That's to say the least. Several GNU package maintainers responded that they would quit immediately. I myself did not like the punitive spirit of that approach and decided against it. I think this is interesting because that tells you right away that a discussion about adopting a code of conduct was happening within the GNU project, and people were like, no, I will just literally quit. Like people who were, according to Richard Stallman himself, active contributors were like, and maintainers were like, I'm out. And Richard Stallman himself did not like that. So it's worth knowing where people within the community stand. I did not, however, wish to make that an excuse to ignore the problem. So I decided to try a different approach, to guide participants to encourage and help each other to avoid harsh patterns of communication. That's interesting. I identified various patterns of our conversation, which is almost entirely textual, not vocal, that seem like, because, they do most of their stuff via email, that seem likely to chase women away, and some men too. Some patterns came from events that happened in the discussion itself. Then I wrote suggestions for how to avoid them and how to help others avoid them. I received feedback from many of the participants, including some women. I practiced some of these suggestions personally and found that they had a good effect. That list is now the GNU Kind Communication Guideline. The current version is not set in stone. I welcome comments and suggestions for future revisions. And then he says this: the difference between kind communication guidelines and a code of conduct is a matter of the basic overall approach. This is where I felt like this whole discussion got really fascinating. Richard continues, a code of conduct states rules with punishments for anyone that violates them. It is the heavy-handed way of teaching people to behave differently. And since it only comes into action when people do something against the rules, it doesn't try to teach people to do better than what the rules require. To be sure, the appointed maintainers of a GNU package can, if necessary, tell a contributor to go away. But we do not want to need to have recourse to that. The idea of the GNU Kind Communication Guidelines is to start guiding people towards kinder communication at a point well before one would even think of saying, you are breaking the rules. The way we do this, rather than ordering people to be kind or else, is to try to help people learn to make their communication more kind. I hope that the Kind Communication Guidelines will provide a kinder, less strict way of leading a project's discussion to be calmer, more welcoming to all participants of goodwill, and more effective. I thought this was absolutely a fascinating approach, and honestly, it's a very Richard Stallman approach. The response to this was astoundingly positive from some, and astoundingly negative from others, kind of almost as you'd expect, because when you talk, as the moment you utter the word code of conduct, that's what happens. Like, I truly, like, people view me for some reason as being anti-code of conduct. The only real big statement I've really made about codes of conduct is that I like animated GIFs of hugs. That really only pertained to one specific code of conduct. I don't really have strong opinions otherwise, but among certain people, I get branded as very against it. Simply for uttering the phrase code of conduct, people assume I must take a strong stance for or against. And because Richard came out and he used the words code of conduct, and clearly this is sort of a code of conduct alternative, people immediately got mad at him. People who, like the author of the code of conduct that's been used over on the Linux kernel and thousands of other projects. It's a very successful code of conduct. Coraline, who wrote that, should be very proud of her accomplishments in that regard. Very, very not happy about this. Multiple tweets and whatnot around it. A lot of supporters of that code of conduct and other more strict codes of conduct, like the ones that have been used all over, like the geek feminism code of conduct and a few others, been very against this and feel that this, just kind of destroys something. They're very angry about this. And I'm going to be honest, I don't 100% understand the anger, but I read the code of conduct, and honestly, I recommend that you all do as well. It's an interesting approach. I don't know fully the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of this approach, but I like it. I mean, it's basically an extremely long-winded version of mine, right? I say be excellent to each other. There's no punitive damages. Like my community, that's how we run things around here. Just be excellent to each other. There's no like threat if you don't. We'll just deal with that when we deal with that, But like this one goes into detail. Richard goes into detail, like please avoid statements about presumed typical desires, capabilities, or actions of some demographic group. They can offend people in that group, and they are always off topic in GNU project discussions. It just kind of gives recommendations, and it starts all of them with please. Like there's the word please. Let's see, how many is in please? Please is in here. Oh my Lord, look at how many times. 17 times. 17 times Richard says please. That's a lot of please. I mean, this is a very, it's titled A Kind Thing, and it is a very kind document. I think if you go through this, and I won't read the entire thing to you because it's very lengthy, and I've already read enough, and there's more reading to come today. But if you read through it, I'm sure you can find some things where you're like, that maybe is not a great idea, or, oh, there's a better approach than that. But Richard's always already stated he wants feedback, and it's a moving, living, breathing document, right? This isn't set in stone. It's just guidelines for how to be nice to each other in mailing lists and in bug reports and in code commits and those sorts of things. And I like that. How that will play out long term, I think is going to be really interesting to watch. How effective will it be as compared to some of the, as Richard puts it, don't use this word against me, more heavy-handed codes of conduct, remains to be seen. And I think it'll be interesting to kind of compare the results of the two, because if at the end of the day, the goal is that everyone should just be cool to each other, be kind to each other, and provide nice, welcoming, friendly environments for people, then we should, as a group, be cool with trying out different mechanisms. Let's try out the more, as Richard puts it, heavy-handed codes of conduct with punitive damages. Let's try out Richard's more kind of lengthy, kind communication guidelines. Let's try things out. If it doesn't work, we change it up, right? I mean, we're open source, we're free software, we can do that sort of thing. It's totally okay. And in the end, I think we all kind of want the same things. We all want people to feel happy. We all want people to be treated like good, kind human beings, right? So it's cool. Honestly, if you got angry at a document called Kind Communication Guidelines that says please 17 times but makes no other demands upon you, I really wonder if you're not maybe getting mad at something else. So let's put that to the side for a moment. Boy, am I going to get yelled at for this episode. Let's put that to the side, off to the side, over here. Let's talk about SQLite momentarily. Now, this is currently the SQLite, let me make this a little bigger for you here, SQLite Code of Conduct. It is very, very short. Now you notice up here at the top, because this just occurred, this change just happened, there's an overview. And it says, and I quote, "The original document we put here was more of a code of ethics of the project founder. While we stand by those principles, they are not in line with the modern technical meaning of a code of conduct and have hence been renamed." The code of conduct for SQLite is now basically the SQLite community has been a kind, welcoming, and well-mannered community since its inception nearly 2 decades ago. In that time, many of the qualities we've worked hard to bring to our project, safety, consistency, usability, and integrity among them, have been part of our community's culture as well. Pretty straightforward. However, until basically today, that was not the code of conduct. This was. This is the SQLite. They now call it the Code of Ethics. And I'm going to go ahead and read some of it to you. Because it is truly, truly interesting. This document was originally called a Code of Conduct. It was in a slightly different format for the purpose of filling in a box on a supplier registration form submitted to the SQLite developers by various minor clients. Basically, the idea is that some of the companies that SQLite did work with wanted them to have a code of conduct, so they supplied a code of conduct. But the code of the conduct that they supplied was interesting. I'm going to read part of it to you now, and I'm going to try very, very hard to be respectful as I do so. The founder of SQLite and all of the current developers at the time when this document was composed have pledged to govern their interactions with each other, with their clients, and with the larger SQLite user community in accordance with the instruments of good works from Chapter 4 of the Rule of St. Benedict, hereafter the Rule. This code of ethics has proven its mettle in thousands of diverse communities for over 1,500 years, and has served as a baseline for many civil law codes since the time of Charlemagne. Scope. No one is required to follow the rule, to know the rule, or even to think that the rule is a good idea. The founder of SQLite believes that anyone who follows the rule will live a happier and more productive life, but individuals are free to dispute or ignore that advice if they wish. The founder of SQLite and all current developers have pledged to follow the spirit of the rule to the best of their ability. They view the rule as their promise to all SQLite users of how the developers are expected to behave in community. This is a one-way promise or covenant. In other words, the developers are saying, we will treat you this way, regardless of how you treat us. The rule is a numbered set of rules from 1 to 72, and it is fascinating to read through. Rule number 1. First of all, love the Lord God with your whole heart, your whole soul, and your whole strength. Number 2, then love your neighbor as yourself. Number 3, do not murder. Number 4, do not steal. Do not commit adultery. Do not covet. Do not bear false witness. Honor all. Do not become attached to pleasures. Relieve the poor. Clothe the naked. Visit the sick. Bury the dead. Be a help in times of trouble. Most of these, if you read through the vast majority of these, put the religious nature of all this aside, right? Because if you're watching this show, who knows what your religious background is? It's all over the map. And I'm cool with that, right? We're all cool with each other. Again, be excellent to each other. But if you remove the items in here that are more religious in nature, the reality is the rest of the items kind of just apply to everything. All right, relieve the poor, clothe the naked. Be a help in times of trouble. These are all just kind of nice things. These are all good things to do. And even then, they made a point of saying you don't have to follow these things. In the original document, which they have changed now, and I should have grabbed a screenshot of it 2 days ago. The original document made a point of saying, hey, if you can't follow a couple, no biggie, right? It's more of here's a list of good things to try and do, right? Now, here's what fascinates me about this, because the entire SQLite community approved of this. The whole thing, all of them. It's not that big of a community, right? It's a couple of maintainers, and they all approved of this. Therefore, it was a good code of conduct, code of ethics, whatever you want to call it, for them. Maybe it's not for me, or for you, or for the Linux kernel, but for them, totally fine. The result was astoundingly negative. Folks like this gentleman, Darren over on Twitter, some guy that works in our space. So SQLite decided to adopt a code of conduct, which is great, but they decided to adopt one that isn't practical to enforce and that excludes anyone who's not adherent to an Abrahamic tradition. No, really. Goes on to be pretty upset about all that. The author of the author of the Code of Conduct for the Linux kernel said had multiple statements about it, about how it's ridiculous, laughing about how white they probably are, about they're a bunch of white men writing it, and he's just laughing about that, going off about that. This other person, James, well, it looks like it may be time to stop using SQLite as it's readily apparent that my kind is not welcome there. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. And I think this is truly fascinating. A lot of people made comments about how this code of conduct makes them feel unwelcome and not likely to contribute or to stop contributing. All the people that said they'd stop contributing aren't telling you the truth because they're not contributing. It's a very small community right now. Near as I can tell, no one's left because of any of this. The second, people were like, well, I'm not contributing because I'm not welcome there. Actually, SQLite is, as they put it, open source, not open contribution. As in, they're not looking for contributors right now. They develop it and maintain it and release the source code to everybody for free under a free license. They have reasons for doing that. In order to keep SQLite, they say, in the public domain and ensure that the code does not become contaminated with proprietary or licensed content, the project does not accept patches from unknown persons. They make a big bold headline thing, not open contribution. So everyone who was saying, I won't contribute now, you weren't gonna anyway. That's just the way it is. Like, that's just a fact. So I am baffled. I am blown away by the amount of anger that people express towards all these things. Do not give a false peace. Oh, my favorite ones. I love that there is, I wish SQLite would have just kept this as their code of conduct. Be not proud. Be not addicted to wine. And my favorite, be not a great eater. Awesome. Be not drowsy. Be not lazy. Be not a grumbler. I tell you, I would fail so many of these, but just the same, I'm fine with it. Be not a detractor. Be in dread of hell. Keep death daily before your eyes. I'm like, well, that's an intense one. Number 53. The one that Lunduk will immediately fail. Do not love much talking. Number 54, holy moly. Speak no useless words or words that move to laughter. Do not love much boisterous laughter. But it has some good stuff in it too. Like number 64, hate no one, right? You know what? I believe respect your seniors and love your juniors. Make peace with your adversary before the sun sets. I mean, pray for your enemies in the love of Christ. Like, I respect them for having this. I am not a Christian man, but I fully respect them for using this. Total mad respect. I am a little bit weirded out that we're still yelling about all this stuff. I know it was expected. I know that me and you and probably every hamster in the world predicted that we'd still be yelling about this stuff. About, the political differences between us, between the codes of conducts that each project should or shouldn't have, and how evil projects are for either adopting a code of conduct or not adopting a code of conduct. The reality is, at this point, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you run a project, a show, anything that could, in theory, have some sort of a code of conduct type thing, if you adopt one, you're going to get yelled at. The crazy thing is, you're going to get yelled at by people who don't want a code of conduct to exist at all, and you're going to get yelled at by people who feel like you adopted the wrong one. And that's been proven this week. Some of the most vocal and spirited, and I respect them for it, advocates of codes of conduct within projects have gotten furiously angry at the SQLite people, at Richard Stallman for having the audacity of putting their personal feelings about how to treat others down on paper, or to say things like, let's try and communicate kindly towards each other. And that has resulted in anger. If that results in anger, there's nothing that's not going to result in anger. No matter what you do, no matter what any project does relating to this, you're going to get yelled at by a large contingency of people on a bunch of different sides, even though each contingency is pretty small in and of itself. It's just that everyone is so fractured and so picking sides against each other. I'm here today sending out the information about this. I just simply read some of the stuff to you, add a little bit of commentary from me. I laughed a little bit because some of it's funny. And sometimes we just have to be okay to laugh at things, ourselves included. I'm going to get yelled at about this. I know that. It's okay. It's really okay. And to the people who are about to yell at me, I'm going to say this straight up front ahead of time. I forgive you. We're cool. You and me, we're fine. Even if you hate the words that I'm saying and you hop on Twitter and you yell about it, or like less than half a dozen of you, probably like 4 of you, if you like to literally email and call other conferences and threaten them. Yeah, this is happening. If they even talk to me, I forgive you for that too. Because I know in the end that all of us, every single one of us, kind of wants the same thing ultimately. I truly believe that. And I'm going to hear about that statement too. But I believe that we all are genuinely good people deep down. And we want good things. We want people to feel safe and loved and comfortable and welcomed. And we want to lead happy lives. And we want to contribute to open source and free software because we love it. I don't really know how we resolve the current situation we're in, where people just every single week, I mean, we just started this week out with it, where people are yelling at each other about simply coming up with little documents that help to advise how we hang out together, how we work together, how we make people feel loved. And we're yelling at each other because of that. Seems like Richard Stallman, the SQLite folks, the folks writing the codes of conduct over here and over there, and the folks who are concerned about codes of conduct existing at all, are all kind of on part of the same page. They want people to be treated well, with respect. They want people to be loved. They want people to be welcomed and safe. And to all of you working towards that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for working towards that. Thank you for dedicating your time towards that. But please stop yelling at each other. Please stop screaming and making jokes about how the white men over here come up with a code of conduct, so therefore they're evil. Stop with the racist, sexist stuff. Let's just love each other. Let's be excellent to each other. Let's all follow the Lundu code of conduct if we could. I have my own personal take on how all things should go. And I'm a very simple man. I really am. I like people just treating each other nice. And again, to the people who are inevitably going to be yelling at me, who are going to be posting things about how awful I am for having posted this video, I forgive you. We're cool. If you would like to talk to me one-on-one, I'm here. Hell, in a group, I'm here. And that's all I got to say about that. I would like to talk about some of the companies out there that make free and open source stuff really, really happen and rock. Like the folks over at Lulzbot 3D printers. They make literally the most amazing 3D printers on the planet. But what's more is they love open source. They love open hardware. They love free software. They had a sale last summer where they literally were selling all their refurbished gear for massive discount to start with. And they gave, I can't remember what the deal was. It was something like every sale they gave $50 or something like that to the Free Software Foundation. And in the end, they raised thousands and thousands of dollars for the Free Software Foundation. That's the kind of folks they are. Find out more about their 3D printers and all their print heads and everything else they make over at lulzbot.com and Pogo Linux. They've been supporting and helping free software and open source conferences, Linux conferences specifically, for years. They go there, they go to them, and man, I've lost track of the number of times I go to a conference and the Pogo Linux dudes are there. They've got a little booth, and I love this about them. They don't put up a flashy booth. They show up with a table. They put up a sign. It's like, here, Pogo Linux. They get some stickers and some swag out, and they plop down like a rig. And they'll be like, you know what? We're going to give this away. Sometimes they give away a big old workstation. Last Linux Fest Northwest, they gave away this NAS that I can't remember how much it had in it. It was like a billion terabytes. It was awesome. And they just gave it away. They're like, here, you know what? People should be able to play with this hardware. Here's the kind of awesome stuff we do, powered by open source. Rock out with it. And they support the conferences that way. They support shows like this to help get the word out about open source, about free software. These guys are awesome. Find out more over at pogolinux.com. They're just the best. And Purism. Purism is making a phone, son, the Librem 5 smartphone, which both I and a lot of other people are putting a lot of hopes into, is due to come out at the beginning of this next year. They're working on their development kits and everything else right now. It is an actual, honest to goodness, GNU / or as I've taken to calling it, GNU plus Linux distribution powered phone. It is amazing looking. The way the work they're putting into it, the time and effort is truly stellar. That means you can run desktop applications on here. This is a true convergence device. It is absolutely stellar looking, plus hardware kill switches for things like the cellular baseband, right? So it respects your privacy. Truly fantastic. And they also sell great laptops that do the same thing. Go to their website at purism, puri.sm. And, I'm just going to go ahead and say, that's all I have to say. If you watch this show and you enjoy it, head on over to lunduke.com or patreon.com/Lunduke, and you can pitch in $1 or $2. You can get the RSS feeds for the MP3 version, the MP4 version. It's glorious. Do that. Do that, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. I hope I don't get yelled at too much.